All right. Well, good group here today. I'm going to put the uh, screensaver back up for a second. Uh, it's the one of the great pictures from the new James Webb Space Telescope, and looking farther into outer space than anything we've had before, and sort of will hit this theme today. I mean, even they trained it on a patch of sky that looked like it had no stars, and then when they turned the thing on, uh, they saw pictures like this. They're seeing back. It's also a time machine. They're seeing back about 13 billion years. This light. I mean, this whole thing could be gone by now. It took long times for the light to even get to us, traveling at the speed of light. But it's an amazing double star system there. I think it's called the Southern Nebula or something like that. Who knows what name what name it goes by, but just the vastness of it, and what we're finding with that. Do watch if you have access to PBS, especially if you stream PBS. Watch the Nova film on just the making of this thing. It's 1 million miles from Earth now, so that it can be far enough away from the infrared comes from anything with heat, and so they want to get far enough from the heat of the Earth, and they have this huge tennis court size 5-layered kind of shield to keep out the infrared of the sun, so they can just look into the dark space. It's quite amazing, and they had to get it all right, because there's no way, unlike the Hubble, when it was not right, we sent up astronauts to fix it. The Hubble didn't focus at first. This one shot only, and they worked on it for decades, and there it is. So we can still, people on this planet still can do great things, and that's one thing that really, if we can do this, we can do anything, and it just bores me up to see it. Well, all right. I'm going to stop to share. Do try to see that Nova thing. It's quite amazing. Okay, I've got a couple of poems today. This one is called "Why Are You Unhappy?" And actually, I'm pretty happy when I show up here with this group. But why are people generally unhappy? Especially in our country, when we have so much, but you see hatred, just people are just not happy campers. Well, why is that? Well, this poem addresses that, and we'll go into inner space via this poem, and then we'll pop back to the 3rd century, do a little time travel, 4th century AD, and have another poem from the 4th century. So it sort of is happy hour, 2 poems today. So this is "Why Are You Unhappy?" Why are you unhappy? Why can't you enter the gateless gate of bliss, which is always open, with no hinges to rust? Both questions have the same answer. Why are you unhappy? Why can't you enter the gateless gate of bliss, which is always open with no hinges to rust? Both questions have the same answer. Because everything that you think and all that you do is for yourself. And there isn't one. Oh, sure, there is this confused, angst-ridden, uptight, fictional self that we're all truly convinced is really us. But is this a self worth having? Is this a self worth maintaining? Make no mistake about it. Takes all the energy we can muster to just maintain this virtual suffering that we call ourself. When the Roman soldiers entered the Holy of Holies in Jerusalem, on the day they began to destroy the temple, they found a completely empty room. Not being trained in Buddhist dialectics, however, they missed the point entirely. And we all know what became of Rome and the empire. All right. Let's crack this open a little bit. Why are you unhappy? Why can't you enter the gateless gate of bliss, which is always open with no hinges to rest? The gateless gate is one of the shortest, most interesting koans in the Zen pack of koans is how do you enter the gateless gate? Which is always open. Obviously, there's no gate and no hinges to rest because there's no gate. Why can't you enter the gateless gate of bliss? Why are you unhappy? Both questions have the same answer. Because everything that you think and all that you do is for yourself, and there isn't one. Oh, sure, there's this confused, angst-ridden, uptight, fictional self that we are all truly convinced is really us. But is this a self worth having? Is this a self worth maintaining? Make no mistake about it. It takes all the energy we can muster to just maintain this virtual suffering that we call ourself. When the Roman soldiers entered the Holy of Holies, on the day they began to destroy the temple, they found a completely empty room. Not being trained in Buddhist dialectics, however, they missed the point entirely. And we all know what happened, what became of Rome. We all know what became of Rome and the empire. All right, let's tease that open a little bit. Why are people so unhappy? Wars, mass shootings. It's not just in the United States. It's warline, greed, starvation. You know the gamut of it. You can see it all now. We're the really first generation that can see the world, all over the world. 100 years ago, the reason there's so many counties in Kentucky, for instance, is because, and in all the states, is because you don't want the county seat to be much more than a day's buggy ride away, so you could get to the court or whatever. Now, and many people lived and died most of their lives not going, 50 miles from their house, not knowing what was 50 miles beyond their house. Now we see the world. We can even see the universe at such depth. Yeah, so we're a different generation, and but this is the first. Really, this poem is from a Buddhist point of view. We're unhappy because everything we think and all that we do is for ourself. And the Buddha would say there isn't one. Not really. Yeah, there is this mirage. I remember when Cynthia Bourgeault was giving a talk, and she was flying, taking a prop plane to get back to British Columbia where she lived. at night, and she was coming back from Maine and going to British Columbia, and she had to get onto this final kind of puddle jumper to take her back to British Columbia. And so it was at night, and she was walking out to the airplane, smaller plane, and they were revving it up, and there was a light out there because it was nighttime. And she looked at the prop, and it looked like a solid gold disc of that was solid, and it was like a solid gold disc. Well, she knew that it was a mirage. It wasn't solid. It was just light shining through this quick moving propeller. That was a good metaphor for her of the fictional self, the mirage self, the camouflage, the what some people call the false self. It's not really false. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just we buy it, and it's okay, but the amount of energy it takes to maintain that image, because the mirage we see, we think everybody else sees, and it's not permanent. It's not even solid. It's just in our mind that, you know, in a few minutes when we sit in meditation, we'll be quite aware. Oftentimes you're quite aware of that quick moving propeller of thought that makes everything seem so solid. Every one of us has been absolutely sure of something only to realize it was all in our mind. We just a bunch of thoughts. Everybody's had that happen at least once, probably many times if you pay attention to it. The thing we're so certain about, mirage. So the only thing false about it, well, a couple things, but it's just not who we really are. Who are we really? That's a whole other koan. Who am I? It's a whole other koan. If I'm not that, who am I? Okay. But the point is, the Buddha was seeing so many people suffering because basically that was it. Because everything we think and all that we do is about trying to maintain this, make sure it's buffed up so everybody can see it and all that. You know, image maintenance is a bitch. Takes a lot of energy. Takes a lot of energy. That's energy you can't use for maybe finding out who you really are and what you should be doing on this planet. Most of us. That's what in the mystical traditions, East and West, North and South, they have a word that's called sleep. They don't really cast aspersions on it. That's what we call being asleep, because you could go through your whole life and never see through that surface image, the fast moving blade up here, light shining through it, you see. Interesting. Okay, so then the second the stanza talks about what happened, about 30 or 35 years after Jesus came and went. There was a rebellion by the Jews, and the Romans crushed it. And part of the crushing was they wanted to they razed the Temple of Solomon. They just destroyed it all. But before they destroyed it, they wanted to get a little peek at what was in the Holy of Holies. This is, there was where the hoi polloi or normal people sat, and then there was a curtain. See, there was a curtain, and behind that curtain was the Holy of Holies. And only the high priest could go in there. So maybe even some of the lesser priests, maybe they tried to take a peek, but the most holy thing in the world was there, you see. So when the Roman soldiers came in, they were ready to, get the Ark of the Covenant or walk off with the gold, and it was empty. And not understanding the Buddhist dialectics, which existed at that time, but they hadn't filtered into the empire yet. They didn't understand that emptiness could be the holiest thing. Interesting. Yeah, but Buddha would understand that. And then the final line as well. They didn't get that. And we know what became of the empire. what becomes of all empires, you see. Jesus was onto that because he said, my kingdom is not of this realm. When we're looking through that telescope, we're seeing unseen realms that no other being on this planet has ever seen. And to the naked eye, unaided by any telescope, it's dark sky. But if you go far enough, back in time far enough, it's a time machine. That's a thing. It's very hard to wrap your mind around the time machine, telescope being a time machine, but they can see things we can't see now. Yeah, and so this is a created universe, and you've heard this, that the stars that you're even seeing with your naked eye, they may have burned out a long time ago. Okay, and the new stars that are being born, you can't see them yet, just because of the way how the vast distances. So there's something about space and vastness that that's necessary to connect us to, we got two universes we're always working with. We're working with the material universe, and then we're working with the physical universe, and then we're working with the metaphysical universe. I had a metaphysics class one time. I didn't get it at the time, but there's a metaphysical universe too. And so the telescope is pulling us into the physical universe. That's why the astrophysicists, man, they're going to town now, because they can learn so much more, because they can see so much further, and they can see. But that's still the physical universe. The metaphysical universe is the transcendent. It's the thing that, the universe, we know by measurement that it's expanding. What's it expanding into? I mean, when you think that thought, the mind doesn't get any grasp. There's a metaphysical universe, and somehow space and holiness come together. Emptiness scares most people. One time the Dalai Lama said, I still don't quite get emptiness. His mind doesn't get emptiness, but the Buddhists worship emptiness, because emptiness, an empty room is, you got room to move. Imagine if you just kept piling furniture into a room, no room to move. So emptiness goes with freedom, but it also goes with our odyssey to come into union with the transcendent, with the metaphysical. Okay, that's an odyssey too. And just being obsessed with your own individual self, which is a big illusion that any one of us exists individually. Try to just shut the air off for a minute. Take water away from the equation. We'll see how long this thing lasts. No, see, so this is another kind of odyssey, and I loved 2001, A Space Odyssey, when it came out, because it's vast. Our view is too small of everything. And so, you could be an astronaut, or you could be an astrophysicist, these guys working on these telescopes and such, or you could be an intronaut, which is what this training is. We're training intronauts, people to go into the vastness of inner space. Merton always contended, if we didn't make this journey in the vastness of inner space, we all the work we do in outer space was going to come to nothing. That this is the journey, and it's every bit as long and arduous and tricky, because you're going into the dark when you do it. I'm wearing the mirror medallion today just because that's what the telescope is, giant mirror. You got to see it to believe it, and it's a kind of it's amazing. It's like so much bigger than the Hubble. And then there's another mirror that it connects to, smaller mirror that basically that integrates the giant mirror, what all the panels are seeing, and pulls it together, and then that's what they beam back. Well, so this idea of two mirrors, that's to me that's a mystic idea, because it brings you back to Meister Eckhart, the great Dominican, who said, "The eye with which I see God is the eye with which God sees me." It's like these two mirrors of that, and a mirror isn't false unless you go to the Nelson County Fair, which just opened, where they'll have the trick mirrors. But really good, the mirrors that they did for the Webb telescope, even a single hair from one of the guys working on it could. So they were working in a clean environment at the very end when they even packed it up. It's an amazing story. Do try to catch the Nova thing, but the mirror just shows what's there, you see. So here's a bit of 4th century Desert Father, if I can find it. Let me see. This is interesting. So the guys have been working on this for a long time. This is a bit of wisdom that comes from the Desert Fathers. These were guys who bailed out of the imperial ship in the middle of the 4th century. They left the cities of Alexandria and Damascus, of whatever, where the Roman Empire and Christianity were getting in bed together, and they left and they went out to the desert. And so this is a bit of wisdom from that time. Abba Isaac, Abba meant father, so he's probably, the most senior of them. Abba Isaac, one of the Desert Fathers and the leader of a 4th century lay contemplative community, explained to a novice one day, and get this, because we're about ready to go into inner space via this, I would recommend anyway. Abba Isaac said, "We pray with the door shut when, without opening our mouths and in perfect silence, we offer our petitions to the one who pays no attention to the words, but instead looks deeply into the mirror of our hearts." We practice with the doors shut. That goes back to Gospel of Matthew 6:6, where Jesus said, "Go into your room and shut the door." Well, they didn't have rooms, and they didn't even have doors on them. So it's a metaphor here. We pray with the door shut. So we close our eyes. And if you're Buddhist and you pray with the eyes open, you sort of defocus them. You're not looking around. We pray with the doors shut. So in the darkness, that's another way of saying we pray with the doors shut, that we're going into the darkness, just like deep space, deep inner space, when, without opening our mouths and in perfect silence. So now we have darkness and we have silence, which is deep space. If you notice, without opening our mouths and in perfect silence, we offer our petitions to the one who pays no attention to the words, but instead looks deeply into the mirror of our heart. Interesting take on it, I think. That and because we all, the way we learned to pray as the children, at least I did, is you would implore God when you were in a jam, or if it's worse, it becomes like a Christmas list. All these things we want, all the things the fictional self wants and thinks it needs to be happy. But this Desert Father is saying, just sit there in the stillness, eyes shut, in the silence. And that you don't need any words. You don't need any thought. You don't have to think of exactly what you want from the one. Not the one. Thomas Keating once said. He said, "God speaks every language, but God's preferred language is silence." His favorite is silence. You don't have to tell the one, the transcendent reality, anything. It's a kind of heart to heart encounter. You see, it's a kind of mirror to mirror encounter where, and these mirrors are so sensitive that they pick up the light out of the darkness. And you have a inner space telescope inside. It's called the mirror of the heart, the cave of the heart. And just in the silence, in the stillness, you can pick up the light. It takes a while for it to be transmitted. Forget how long it is from the time they get the image to the telescope and how long it takes to get back to their computers. But that's why you have to be patient and perseverant when you meditate. But that image of just sitting, no words need to be spoken. Yeah, and it's deep calling to deep, as the psalm says. You are just opening up. You're opening up, and just being seen, letting the transcendent see you. Now, the thing that gets in the way is when we get caught in thinking. I think, therefore I am. Well, that's the motto of the false self. Yeah, and so the thoughts come in. So it's a little bit of cloud cover for the mirror. So when you just drop, every time we just lay those thoughts aside over and over, you have to be very perseverant. There's a little glimpse, say, of that. All metaphor, of course, but I think helpful. So yeah, that's good enough, I think. So we'll sort of just go into meditation mode now.